Yeah. Yeah.
I'm ready. 'Cause I got some things to talk about. I got some things to say.
Yep. Well, hello. This is Stephen Powell. Right now, currently on the line, I do have Troubled Soul. He's basically a well-known individual inside of the community. He likes to, of course, speak about ongoing topics, things of that nature. Please say hello to everybody, Tony.
Hello, what's going on?
All
How
right.
is everyone?
Well, hopefully they're doing good, especially with a lot of things that are going on today. Today we're going to be speaking about, of course, Black Lives Matter protests and things of that nature. I of course wanted to get your opinion about what's going on. Of course, express my opinion as well regarding it. As far as the Black Lives Matter protest itself, what is your take on this, Trouble Soul?
Well, my take on it is it's been a long time coming. Obviously, we have been slandered and slaughtered, you know what I mean, for over 400 years. And the fact that a riot / protest has finally reached the peak that it has.
Yeah.
In kind of a way, it's unsettling because before the Gregory Floyd, there was there was the Trayvon Martins, Michael Browns, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And things like that. So for me, it's a good thing, but in the same sense, I'm kind of looking at it like this was overdue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it should have been done when Trayvon was gunned down, or it should have been done. As a matter of fact, let's go a little further back. It should have been done when Sean Bell or Emmett Till.
Emmett Till was one. He was one.
Okay.
Yeah, and there was also George Stanley Jr., which was actually the youngest person in American history, 14 years old, given the electric chair.
Right, in the electric chair, yes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So, the protest is something that is overdue. It's been way overdue. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because there's so many names that we can just throw out there. Oscar Grant, we can do this all day.
Yeah, I mean, if you truly honestly look throughout history, okay.
Yes. So
because it bothers me when I hear, a lot of these individuals who don't fully understand, or it's not even the fact that they don't fully understand. It's the problem is the fact that they refuse to try to acknowledge or understand. And because if you look throughout history, they want to talk about the rioting and looting and the burning and so on and so forth. I'm sorry to say, but African Americans, even Hispanics, have been dealing with basically their bodies being looted throughout history. Everything that they have earned, everything that they have tried to build, burned in front of them.
Right.
They were at one point promised even like things like reparations, things of that nature, and it all they get in return is what, it's to me, I truly honestly feel as if when it comes down to society and everything else. Look at South Africa, for Christ's sakes. In South Africa they had something called reconciliation. To where once the Africans were able to, of course, regain the government, regain the land, and things of that nature, they didn't do what America did. America, they swept the problem under the rug, and in some cases act like it basically just didn't exist, or it's it's not a big deal. It got to the point to where in South Africa they spoke about it. It's like here in America, it's a cliche. You bring up race, you bring up topics like that, and they're like, oh, no, I don't want to talk about it. Oh, nope, la 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 la, don't talk about it. Same way that we treat, even like with politics, same thing that we treat politics here. They say it's cliche to speak about political views or anything of that nature, when in all actuality, if there's a problem, the only way to fix it is to speak about it, to come together and find a solution that works for at least everybody. Yeah. Now, I do want to also touch base on the spin that basically the media. This does include Fox, CNN, a lot of these media outlets that are only focusing on the violent riots. All right, not focusing on the mass amount, which is way more than the riots, way more than the looting, the mass amount of peaceful protests that have been going on in America. What is your take on the media, emphasizing on mainly the riots instead of the peaceful ones?
Well, there's a theory that I would like to share with the people, with the ears that are tuned in. I have a theory called the hidden agenda theory, because the white supremacist theory, that's kind of like, that's kind of doing it a little. That's kind of like doing a little bit too much, in my opinion, because there are certain black powerful people that are basically a part of the Coonage, and the Coonage is basically a black wealthy individual. For those who don't know what Coonage is, because I'm going to explain it to you. Coonage, the definition to me of Coonage is a black individual who decides to deny not only their heritage, but also be blind to what's going on and why it's going on.
You're speaking like on the topic of like Kanye West, when he basically tried to say that slavery didn't exist and things like that.
Right. So now with the hidden agenda theory, this is where I come from with this.
Okay.
The hidden agenda theory is that the hidden agendas are the people behind the curtains. These are the people that control they're the one that controls the economy. They control what goes on the news.
The elites. Exactly.
Right. So, they control the buttons. They push the buttons. So, they're going to do that because it's a distraction. They want you to be distracted by the looting, and they want you to have this bad taste about our people, because that's what they decide to show. But what they don't show you is how the officers that are supposed to protect and serve minorities like you and I, or let's go, Hispanics and blacks, how they're randomly slaughtering the Hispanics and blacks, how they're just treating us like we're animals. They don't show that on there.
Exactly. And one of the things I did notice, I do apologize for interrupting. However, one of the things that I did notice, which actually, is attached to basically what you're saying, is that media coverage, they're not showing why some of this, ends up happening. Some of these police officers are literally coming out here, geared up, ready for war, and they're popping off tear gas and rubber bullets at peaceful protesters, which in return retaliates and becomes a bigger thing. I do apologize. I did want to add that into what you were saying.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. Because that's what's going on. Or like, there's only certain slaughterings of black people or Hispanics that make the news, but there's thousands of cases that we don't hear about till later.
Yep.
Like for example, I wanna touch bases on this one example that I saw on my social media. it was this black teacher basically explaining about in 1906 about a black man being put into a cage in a zoo. The New York Times wrote an article about this black man in this zoo.
Do you recall the name of the individual that happened? Because I actually that sounds like something I definitely want to look up.
You know what? That we I wish I would have paid more attention to it, but the part that grasped me was the fact that the New York Times participated in that, and they wrote a whole article about it.
Well, you also have to recall as well, because I mean that is something that I will be posting on, the Facebook page for my political site, the U.S. Global. I do apologize. It's been a long day, long night as well. I was out protesting, yesterday, of course, as you know. However, the global free speech, that is something that an article that I will be posting on the Facebook page for there after when I find it. But basically, you also have to look at too. Back in the 1980s, remember, of course, with the Central Park Five, the New York Times did took money, so to say, from Donald Trump to basically campaign to have the Central Park Five executed. Remember, I'm not sure if you recall the Central Park Five.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it does not surprise me one bit that at one point in time, the New York Times actually wrote articles regarding things of that nature, or even at some point in time supported it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So with all of that, this is what the Hindu agenda theory is to me. That's what that is. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they choose to put out just look at these people. Look how they're look what they're doing, and not even knowing that they're still officers just abusing their power, abusing that badge. Like I saw, and you know what? For the fact that Gregory Floyd has died due to a officer putting his knee in his back to the point where he was unconscious and died.
Yep.
There was another video that I saw just like that. And this time, it was involved, and a female officer was involved in it. Mm-hmm. This individual, and I have to, when I look at these things, I have to pay more attention to these people's names. Please understand, people, that I do watch a lot of this stuff that goes on, and it overwhelms my brain. So.
Yeah, sometimes you kind of just got to tune it out because, you truly honestly get really emotional. I mean, I do the same thing too. I get so emotional, watching, people of my skin complexion. It's like, what was his name? I believe his last name was Castillo or something like that. He was literally shot and killed by police in front of his daughter and his girlfriend.
Wow.
So I mean, trust me. I mean, things like that, because I mean, I'm a father myself. Okay.
Right.
And to me, it's heartbreaking to watch something like that. And even trying to imagine, being in a car, with my fiance and my kids, and next thing I know, I'm being shot and killed in front of them.
Right.
And it's simply because of my skin color and because of a certain situation. A police officer happens to feel a little uncomfortable. So instead of trying to figure out ways to de-escalate a situation that truly, honestly, wasn't even aggressive in the first place. If you ever get a chance to watch what happened to Mr. Castillo, you would truly, honestly sit there and say there was literally no cause.
At all.
Yeah.
At all.
But it's heartbreaking. So yeah, I mean, trust me, I completely understand where you're coming from with that, because I mean, it can be very overwhelming.
Right, and you know, we speak on children. You know, I myself, I have no children, but this is the reasoning why I didn't want to have any children, because I would love to, but the world that we live in, I just can't bear bringing any of my offspring into the world that we live in, because it's been like this since I can remember. And I don't want to put them in that position, because I'm telling you right now, any of my kids end up like that little girl and that little boy that were brutally beat down by a grown white man.
You talking about the one in Texas where they were at the pool?
Yes.
Yeah.
That. So that is supposed to protect the little girl from predators and kidnappers, beat her like she was a rabid dog.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not for it. I'm taking you down, and
exactly.
If I have to go down for my child, then so be it.
See, and the sad part is because if a issue like that was to occur, you attack the officer for harming your child for absolutely no reason. Somehow, some way, they will try to spin it to make it seem like you were the bad guy, like you were wrong. You have a history with hanging out with this type of people. Yeah, you were arrested before for this. Therefore, trying to put a price tag, so to say, on your life.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, it's sad.
Right. And this is all a part of the hidden agenda strategy. This is what they do. They do this.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So for those who don't understand why this is happening, just want to sit here and act like they don't have a clue. There's so many key reasons of why this is going on. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
We didn't just wake up one day and just want to mess everything up. And then on top of messing everything up, let's not forget, Hispanics and blacks, we built this damn country.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what no one says. We built this country.
Yep.
So, if we want to mess up a Walmart, mess up a Target, you know what I mean? We're talking about companies that either secretively or publicly support what Mr. Trump has going on and the rest of the hidden agenda.
You're trying to piss some people off mentioning Trump now, huh?
I don't care. I don't care. I'm just saying, because Trump is now a part of the hidden agenda. He's been a part of it.
Yep.
He's been a part of the hidden agenda. It's just now his seat is much bigger. His seat is much important. He's always had a seat at the circle. You know what I mean? He's always had a seat at the round table. He's always had it, because when you have money, you get certain access to certain things.
Exactly.
And that's what the hidden agenda is. When you are of a certain caliber, you do get certain access to certain secrets and certain things that they have planned.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, fuck it. Burn it all.
Burn it all. And
just as long as hold on, Mr. Powell, let me say this.
Yeah. As
long as it's not a black business, a Dominican business, because in certain Dominicans they can deny it, but y'all got black descent also.
Puerto Ricans do too.
So as long as it's not Hispanic business, black business, leave it alone, because we're the ones that are suffering.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, I also wanted to chime in on this. Okay, of course, being of both of us being of Puerto Rican descent, you're mainly black and Puerto Rican. We all know. Well, I mean, those who understand the history of Puerto Rico. Now, I'm going to go ahead and break this down for the viewers for one more minute if you don't understand the history of Puerto Rico. Now, Puerto Rico in English means rich port. Basically, when slaves were brought over, Puerto Rico was basically the main headquarters for the slave trade. Okay, when the Spaniards were, of course, involved. Now, the natives of Puerto Rico were Tiano. Okay. Now, when the Spaniards came over, of course, what they decided to do was basically rape and kill the natives of that land, and then which, of course, the rape and everything else ended up creating offspring, which then in return was, of course, forced mating between African Americans, the Tianos, as well as the Spaniards. Now, the only difference between an African American male, a Puerto Rican, Dominican, and of course they're not Hispanic, but even like Haitians and things of that nature. The only difference really is just a boat stop.
That's it.
That's really the only difference. So when I hear my Hispanic brothers and sisters, basically saying this, that, and the third about the protests, I'm looking at them like, you don't realize this is also for you too.
Right.
This
is definitely a concern of yours.
Exactly. Also. Now, of course, Hispanic males, Hispanics, period, they're not as of a high. They're not at a high target the same way that African American male, African American period is.
Right.
Now, of course, studies have shown. Back in, I believe it was 2016, African American males were actually 5 times. And now, mind you, this is an FBI study. African Americans were actually 5 times more likely to be shot and killed if unarmed by police. Just last year, 2019, it was, I believe it was like 2.94 or something like that, which is still basically 3 times more likely, than any other race. Now, mind you. Exactly. Now, mind you, in America, the African American populace is only 12% of the total population of America. So you're telling me 12% of this nation is 3 to 5 times more likely to be shot and killed if unarmed. And then they want to sit here and look and try to say that there isn't some sort of systematic, racism going on. And they can sit here and say all they want. Black people this, black people that. Well, guess what? If you're one of those type of people that say that type of thing, if you truly honestly believe that type of thing, and you want to claim that you're not a racist, you might as well just go ahead and accept the fact that, yeah, you are. You're just simply a closet racist, and you don't want to actually come out with your thoughts because you're afraid of, the basic consequences of being a racist.
And Mr. Powell, I would like to chime in on that. So, if we let's take it a little further.
Mm-hmm.
People can say how much of an animal, people could say this and that about black folks, but let's be clear and let's be aware that our problem was brought on by the hidden agendas.
Yep.
Our problems were brought on because of this. Not just because they decided to kidnap us from our homeland and bring us over here, but let's also talk about the cocaine trade, the heroin trade,
oh yeah,
the liquor.
Yeah.
All of that is because of the hidden agendas. Y'all brought that over here. We didn't bring that over here.
Exactly.
Because
we couldn't even own anything to bring it over.
At all. So how did that stuff get over here?
Exactly.
How did it get over here?
Exactly.
Because we didn't bring it over here. Hell, we can't even get on a boat without looking suspicious. And
it's so sad too, because anybody who has common sense knows that it is the African American community that is most affected by narcotics.
Yes.
Period. However,
Yes.
why, how and why did he, did it ended up there? You know what I mean? Because they can sit here and say, oh, well, this, that, and the third. Well, you can't really say African Americans brought it over. They're not allowed. They literally for a long time, they're literally not even weren't allowed to have anything. And then it got to the point to where when we were able to have things, just like now, if I had a nice car or whatever it may be, if I'm driving down the road, a cop sees me, automatically I supposedly stole it and being harassed for it. So even technically now, I mean, we still can't technically even really have anything, because even if we did, we still get harassed for having it. All right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Which in return makes me. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, real quick.
And Mr. Powell, why is that? Because the hidden agenda controls that. Look at all the rules and regulations that you have to follow in order to have a car.
Yeah.
Look at the rules and regulations before you can even operate a car. Look at the rules and regulations that you have to follow before you can operate a car.
Mm-hmm.
Look what they say in these textbooks when you're studying for your permit exam. It's
been
not
so long since
right
I had to
for
do that.
you. It's not a right for you to drive a vehicle. It's a privilege. Why is it a privilege? Because you guys are privileged already.
Mm.
You know what I mean? The hidden agendas are privileged. So because y'all are privileged and you know you're privileged, so now everything else has to be a privilege, when really it should be a right. Because of the simple fact, like I said earlier, we built this damn country.
Exactly.
You guys didn't do it.
Exactly.
You didn't do it. All y'all did was just sit back and eat fucking crumpets or whatever the hell was going on back in them days.
Exactly.
Y'all didn't do nothing.
Basically, this country was built on the back of those of color.
Yes.
Real quick, I would like to quickly just bring up the clip. Hold on one second. It was really interesting. Basically listening to her. How can I say? Basically, the analogy that she used, using Monopoly for an example of the inequality that has happened. Not only how things are looking now and why things are the way that they are now versus back in the day and things of that nature, how we ended up to the point to where it's just now that we're finally able to try to even build anything. So give me 1 second. I believe I got to rewind this. Hold on 1 second. Here we go.
Is that we must never forget that economics was the reason that black people were brought to this country. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Do you understand that? That's what we came to do. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Now, if I right now decided that I wanted to play Monopoly with you, and for 400 rounds of playing Monopoly, I didn't allow you to have any money, I didn't allow you to have anything on the board, I didn't allow for you to have anything, and then we played another 50 rounds of Monopoly, and everything that you gained and you earned while you were playing that round of Monopoly was taken from you. That was Tulsa, that was Rosewood. Those are places where we built black economic wealth, where we were self-sufficient, where we owned our stores, where we owned our property, and they burned them to the ground. So that's 450 years. So for 400 rounds of Monopoly, you don't get to play at all. Not only do you not get to play, you have to play on the behalf of the person that you're playing against. You have to play and make money and earn wealth for them, and then you have to turn it over to them. So then for 50 years, you finally get a little bit and you're allowed to play, and every time that they don't like the way that you're playing, or that you're catching up, or that you're doing something to be self-sufficient, they burn your game. They burn your cards. They burn your Monopoly money. And then, finally, at the release and the onset of that, they allow you to play and they say, okay, now you catch up. Now, at this point, the only way you're going to catch up in the game is if the person shares the wealth, correct? But what if every time you share the wealth, then there's psychological warfare against you to say, oh, you're an equal opportunity hire. So if I played 400 rounds of Monopoly with you and I had to play and give you every dime that I made, and then for 50 years, every time that I played, if you didn't like what I did, you got to burn it like they did in Tulsa and like they did in Rosewood, how can you win? How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have. That if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us.
That was beautiful. So, all in all, you know, I do understand as far as like, you know, audio issues and everything else, which of course I will try to fix in the future, Trouble Soul. However, we did go over and discuss. You had a chance to, of course, understand exactly what was inside of the clip as far as the Monopoly analogy.
Right.
Now at the very end, which I don't believe that this right here was actually brought up, was when she was talking about, I'm not sure, you know who Trevor Noah is?
No, I do not.
Okay, so Trevor Noah, he's mixed. He came from South Africa. He moved here to the U.S. He basically it's not even basically, he is the host for the Daily Show now. He took over for, I believe it was Patrick Stewart before, not Patrick Stewart. I mean, I know his last name was Stewart. I can't remember his name. However, he had came out and was speaking about what was going on, and he was talking about how basically the differences between South Africa and America. And then he had stated he made a comment which to me made sense, and he was talking about contracts in society. And he was saying that it's kind of like an unspoken thing, you know, to where it's like you don't cross the line for this, you don't cross the line for that, and so on and so forth, you know, which basically to a degree keeps the community in order. Okay. She had expressed that, you know, whenever, you know, that sort of contract is broke, that's when the authority, of course, is supposed to come in and cause an issue. And then she had also brought up that what happens when that authority that is supposed to be fair comes in and basically kills us.
Right.
You know, so I mean, me personally, I mean, we've had several conversations.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that brings bells with me was one of our conversations a while back when we were talking about what I like to call societal conditioning. You know, now of course for those you know who has never followed the global free speech or anything like that, I've spoke about it a couple of times. I never went into complete depth regarding what I meant by societal conditioning. However, imagine, if you will, of course, you learn everything that you learn from your parents. Your parents learn everything from their parents. So on, so on, so on, so on, so on. Right? So if you look at the African American community, you look at even, you know, in some cases the Hispanic community and so on and so forth. When African Americans were freed. Now, mind you, I would like to also remind people that yes, Hispanics were also slaves too.
Absolutely.
It was more common for African Americans. However, yes, Hispanics were slaves as well, and I do believe Asians were as well too.
Europeans. Yes, by the Europeans.
Yes, yes. So basically, once everybody was freed, okay, what were they taught? The only thing that they were taught was the thing that their master taught. Okay, so basically they came out of this with not only absolutely nothing, without any type of real foundation, without anything, any knowledge, really just nothing. Okay, since your parents learned from you know, their parents, they learn from their parents, they learn from their parents, going back hundreds of years. Same process. What do you people think was passed down through the African American community when they were basically given nothing?
Right.
Whatever they could pick up along the way is passed down at that point. So for them to sit here and look at what's going on here in society, as far as, you know, the small amount of rioting and burning and things of that, and yes, I would like to emphasize the small amounts of rioting and looting that is happening.
Right.
Where did they learn that from? You know what I mean? The KKK would sit there and literally go into their communities, go in front of their homes, burn across in front of their homes, drag them out of their homes, lynch them, hang them from a tree, burn down their houses, and things of that nature. And it's Black Wall Street is a prime example. When they finally were able to create a foundation, try to get everything going, they burnt that down.
Right.
Where do you think they learned it? You know what I mean? So they can't sit here and say, oh, well, this, that, and the third, and da 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 da. Guess what? You learned yours from where?
Right.
You learned your morality from where? You know, and they can say what they want. I really don't care. Now, me personally, I do not agree with burning down buildings. I do not agree with rioting. I don't. However, I understand their rage, because I feel that same rage. Because if that was like, stem back to Castillo, if that would have been my kids, if it would have been me and my kids inside of that car, I would, to be honest with you, matter of fact, even if it wasn't me inside the car, what if it was just my fiance, and because our son is mixed, and they notice that our son is mixed, they automatically look at her a certain way and decide, okay, let's go ahead and kill her.
Yep. And that's...
I would want to burn everything down too.
Right. And you know, and that's another reason why, for me, like the whole biracial thing is dangerous to me in my eyes. It's very dangerous because at the end of the day, hidden agendas guard dogs, because that's what officers are. They're the guard dogs for the hidden agenda. I don't care how anyone feels about that. Yes, I call them guard dogs, because that's what they are. They're guard dogs. So let's just say these guard dogs see a white woman with a biracial baby. Oh, so this is what you're doing. It's time to eradicate you, because you're playing for the other side.
Exactly.
Because this is how guard dogs, their guard dogs, are trained.
Yep.
Okay. People listening, do you know that these guard dogs are trained to shoot people in the heart instead of the leg to detain someone?
Exactly. But and the sad part is too, they do have things that are non-lethal, which, I mean, don't get it wrong, tasing somebody with a heart problem is lethal. It can be lethal. Okay.
Right.
However, there are many different ways to be able to subdue a suspect in order for you to be able to take them into custody. And but the sad part is, even if you look at George Floyd, for example, the man was handcuffed. He was already in custody.
Right.
But they still did it anyways. He did not resist. Several videos came out. He did not resist. He didn't do anything wrong. He complied with the officer. So they can sit there and say, well, if you just simply complied with the officer, did what the officer said, guess what? George Floyd is a prime example of what happens when we do that.
Right.
And yes, that has happened several times before. I do apologize, but yeah, I did want to make sure that is pointed to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And let's also touch base and be aware. I understand that to you, the rioting and the burning stuff down, it's not okay. But what needs to be brought to the forefront is that us as people, we're still in slavery even after we were free.
Yeah, it's like free range slavery. It's like having free range chicken. You know what I mean? You kind of just give the you dangle around this illusion of freedom when in actuality you're still oppressed.
So while we're being put with all these crazy labels, we're animals, we're this, we're that.
Exactly.
We still have, some of us still have the slave mind. We still have it.
Yeah, to a degree. For those who are trapped inside of that box, yes, I definitely agree with that. Yep.
Right, to a certain degree, we still have the slave mind. So, there's only but so far you can look at these people who are rioting and who are burning things down. They don't know any better because they still have the slave mind.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call that particular that particular scenario part of the slave mind. I do feel as if that aligns more so with the anger. Now, Kanye West, for example.
I only say that because they don't know how to express it without causing damage to their community.
Well, at least.
You know what I mean?
Well, no, I definitely see where you're going with it. However, it's like, for me, it's like, for example, when I think about some of the African Americans who still kind of have that mentality.
Right.
Like, I look at people like Kanye West. Somebody who literally came forward talking about, don't believe in slavery ever existed and all this other extra stuff he's been doing lately, which I get it. The man is basically mentally ill, but to me personally, that's still not a freaking excuse. Because, I mean, to sit there and literally come out, especially as a man of color, to sit here and say slavery did not exist. I'm sorry to say, but that's you just trying to sit here and nod for massa and let me shine your shoes, massa. That's, to me personally, that's what it looks like to me.
Right, and the same exact thing goes for Lil Wayne, because Lil Wayne just did this. Now, I get it. He's the best rapper alive. Yada yada yada. I get all that.
No, all right, no.
Listen here.
I give M props on that.
That's what people. No, that's what people try to put on him because everyone praises him. But let me tell y'all something about y'all precious rap god that everyone just seems to love. Is that he went on Instagram Live a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
He was on Instagram Live with Fat Joe. Now,
wait, with Fat Joe?
Yes.
Okay.
Fat Joe asked this man, he said, Wayne, I want your outlook on what happened as far as the whole Gregory Floyd thing. Now, if no one knows about Wayne's backstory and everything like that, at one point Wayne shot himself as a child. He shot himself and he was saved by a white officer. Okay, that's fine. That white officer, he's okay. You know what I mean? Because he saved him. But this man sat there on live and said, well, if I don't know if I haven't done research and found the reasoning to why, I'm fighting for a certain cause, then I'm not going to do it. We have to do our research. We have to know the reasoning on what we're fighting for. What are you talking about, Mr. Carter? What do you mean?
Yeah, because, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, and Wayne, if you happen to come across this video, that was a bad call. That was a very bad move.
What are you talking about, Dwayne? Because now I gotta call you by your name, Dwayne. Because you're right there.
Exactly.
You're right there with the hidden agendas. You're not, and you're a yes man for them.
Exactly.
Because for you black. You're about as black as night. Okay. You're about as black as night.
Like Wesley Snipes' dark. Like.
What are you doing?
Like Blurple.
How do you sound? Majority of your fan base is black, my man. And this is how you come across. This is what your message is. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
This is what your message. Like you. Okay. So let's go a little bit further. He did an interview on VH1's Behind the Music, and I know a lot of y'all probably remember Behind the Music.
I remember Behind the Music, but I don't think I've seen the one with Lil Wayne.
Okay, so they bring up the whole Katrina thing. Now, the whole Katrina thing was caused by the hidden agenda. Don't care what no one says. This is just how I feel about it. Now, he talks about how Katrina killed his best friend. The whole tragedy killed his best friend. So, Dwayne, do you know that the hidden agenda is the same people that you're also right there with, laughing with, joking with, because you get certain access to secrets and shit? Do you know that there's a reason why that your friend died?
I actually know I actually am aware of the conspiracy theory that you're referring to is basically the HAARP, the HAARP. I'm well aware of that. I've actually had people send me over some research regarding it. People who are in the military, things of that nature, who have sent things over like that to me that I have reviewed. If you're not aware, I do apologize. 1 second. Anybody who's watching this, if you're not aware of what that is, please look it up.
They need to hear that. They need to know about this. They need to know about that. So, therefore, Dwayne, you need to do your research. Okay? You need to do your research, because the same friend that you got on Behind the Music with, oh, they killed my fucking friend for real? Yes. The people that you sit with at that table, they killed your fucking friend. You fucking cone. They killed them. Yeah.
Now, of course, Trouble Soul, real quick, we do got to start to wrap this up. I do want to, of course, add a few points before we call it that. Now, I would like to also bring to attention, to a lot of people, a lot of listeners, of current issues that are basically going on, which is basically fueling what is happening now. If you do look at it, I mean, since Trouble Soul already cracked open that can of worms, I'm also just go ahead and dive in, right?
Right. Might as well.
So the hate speech that you hear from Donald Trump, okay, that is part of what is being fought right now. Okay, I mean, the fact that you're telling me that you can have white supremacists armed to the teeth with AR-15s and bulletproof vests can sit there and run up inside of a state capitol, meanwhile they're outside performing performances, that are racially, derogatory to anybody of color, and so on and so forth, and they're sitting in there just fine inside of the Capitol itself, the Capitol building itself, while they're trying to sit here and figure out legislation for during the coronavirus pandemic, hovering over these politicians with AR-15s, and not a single thing happened to these protesters. Not a single thing. What is the first thing that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth? Those are fine Americans right there. He didn't go out and call them terrorists. He didn't go out and call them thugs. He didn't do any of that. But instead, when Black Lives Matters protests, majority peaceful protest, let me remind you of that, okay? He wants to call them thugs. He wants to try to claim that all of them are rioting and looting. Everything that he has said regarding it has been aimed to try to discredit everything that the African American community is trying to fight against by trying to call them thugs, rioters, and looters. He does not praise those who are out there peacefully. Matter of fact, he gassed them. If you recall, during his photo op that he wanted to do in front of a church, as he held up his Bible, looking like he's probably he's part of the SS army of the Nazis. He sat here and gassed, shot rubber bullets at peaceful protesters. Peaceful. Let me emphasize it again. Peaceful protesters. People can say whatever the hell they want, but guess what? The priest that works, basically people who are part of that church itself were out there giving water bottles to the protesters. Now you cannot sit. Now, if you want to sit here and try to call a priest a thug, you really got your moral compass way off. Okay? They were gassed. They were gassed as well. So you're telling me that members of the church, people who actually are part of the congregation of the church, who are helping these protesters, you really think they're going to help violent protesters? No. You know, if you look at, for example, the whole entire Unite the Right protest down in Charlottesville, when basically white supremacists ran over a counter protester, killed a counter protester, and what does Donald Trump says? There were fine people on both sides. What? And you're not appalled by that? If you are a Trump supporter and even got this far into this segment, because 9 times out of 10 you don't even want to listen to anything that goes against your ideology. However, if you have gotten this far into this conversation and just hearing that alone should be a scratch on the head. The fact that you have white supremacist groups saying that they support Donald Trump because of the fact that his policies align with their agenda, literally said that same thing, and you still want to vote for that guy, I am going to tell you, you are no different than a white supremacist in my eyes. Because if your agenda aligns with theirs, you are an enemy of mine. Period. Now, I do apologize. I went on a little a rant there, Trouble Soul.
Nah, they need to hear that. They needed to hear that.
It just annoys the hell out of me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. No, because this is what's going on. And the fact that people are so ignorant and so redundant to be aware of what this is, then yeah, you're just as blind as the next person. You might as well not even. You might as well not have eyeballs.
Exactly.
You might as well not.
Might as well go ahead and keep yourself underneath a rock at that point.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I mean, then again, I mean, if you really truly honestly think of Trump tards, you know, they're typically anything that goes against their whole entire thought process. They're covering their ears, going la 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 la. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because of course, you know, they don't want to sit there and actually hear facts. They will much rather go ahead and go with the whole, you know, Hitler radio propaganda. You know, North Korea, Kim Jong-un, you know, Putin, while Donald Trump is basically licking Kim Jong-un's asshole the whole fucking time. They would much rather hear stuff like that. Yeah. So of course that right there is going to have to conclude the show. I would like to, of course, once again thank Trouble Soul. Hopefully, I will have you on next week as well.
Hey, I'll be there.
I think next week we need to do a prank call.
Okay. Absolutely. I'm with it. I'm with that.
All right. So thank you for tuning in. Once again, this right here was Real Talk with Stephen Powell underneath the umbrella of the Global Free Speech. And have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening.